We have Colin Barr, executive producer, who's just gone to the loop. And we also have writer, Levi David Adai. And we have Babu Cisse, who played Richard Taylor. I should also add that Richard Taylor is in the audience and is going to take some questions. We're going to do 20 minutes of discussion with the panel, and then we'll open it up to the floor. And perhaps we should just wait for Colin.
Yeah.
We'll certainly need a microphone at the back, I think. Oh no, Esther has one. Why don't you give me one, and then if anyone feels the need to use it. Okay, I'll put it on. Why not? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just while we're waiting, I wonder, Sue, could you just tell us a little bit about Sammy, who I think is
Yes.
here, who played Damilola, and how you found him?
Yes,
Just-
so, hello Sammy, Sammy's at the back.
Hi, Sammy.
I found the floor with Sammy. In fact, Colin's back. Should we,
sorry.
Why
Why don't you answer that, and then we'll go to Colin.
so this is Sammy's first time acting, and I'm constantly amazed every time I see him, how talented he is. We were very keen to pursue as much connection with the local community and as much authenticity as possible. So it was important to us that we looked within the community of South London, and that we were looking for a child from West African background. But most importantly, it was a huge challenge and a tribute to our casting director. We needed to find someone who could convey the effervescent joy that we brought to everyone's lives, and that great personality and charisma that he obviously had. And so we went into local schools, and we had an open casting process, and we found Sammy. And from the first time we met him, we just fell in love with him, and I'm so proud of his achievement. I think he's done an amazing job.
Couldn't agree more. Colin, would you like to, why make this film? Why did you want to make this film?
Well, it was about 2.5 years ago, and someone in the office just mentioned that it would have been 15 years since Damilola had died, and I remember at the time thinking, God, I had such a vivid memory and image of him, and I felt like lots of other people would have that as well, and it felt like it really stood for something. But quite often with these stories, I think we're all guilty of having slightly lazy assumptions about what a story is, from what we read in the newspapers or what we see on television. And I thought it would be interesting to see what lay behind all of that. So I went to see Richard, and he was really generous with his time, and we sat down for a few hours and we talked about the experience from his point of view and from the family's point of view. And I came away from that just really sort of inspired, that feeling like it was a story that really hadn't been told, and that it was a story that was universal, had themes in it that everybody could really relate to, and that it was extraordinarily powerful. And going back to the family story in Lagos and following the journey to London and all of the consequence of Damilola's death, felt like it was a story that really hadn't been told, certainly not told from the family's point of view or from Richard's point of view. So it felt like it had an enormous amount of significance.
And if I could just ask Richard Taylor a question there at the back. I wonder, when Colin came to you, why did you give your consent and indeed agree to be involved in this film?
First of all, we thought about the situation still prevailing in the society, in the community, that Dami was stabbed to death, and in general, what's happening generally with so many deaths of young people. So I was of the opinion that this story should continue to be told, and so as to enable us to get a positive message again into the community, so that young people will learn lessons more. Those who were born then will know about it if it's televised, and so that was the reason why.
And if you don't mind me asking, what did you think of your portrayal in the film?
I can see the resemblance in the old man sitting there. He's young. I have Gary Charles over there, who saw this picture in the newspaper and said, "Oh, why did they choose this young man? You are older." But generally, honestly, Babu has displayed great experience in playing my role. He showed some form of my personality in being angry, you know, over the death of my son. And yeah, he's very good.
Thank you. Levi, if we could come to you. Firstly, why did you want to write this story? And secondly, could you explain your approach? Because it's not necessarily how... You might have done it more as courtroom drama. Instead, you focus on the family.
I think I need to kind of roll back to when I first got a call about the idea, and Colin came to me saying, got something about Damilola Taylor, and the interest of the BBC to do something, but he wasn't quite sure. So, but my initial reaction was hesitant, because I'd done My Murder already, and you know that took a lot of toll. But as well, just the whole mainstream depiction of another young dead black boy. I was like, I don't know, man, do you know what I mean? But when I started talking, I started prodding at the idea and poking it, as I usually do. If I don't like something, I start asking why, what's the point, why do you want to do this, who's this for? And then start asking questions. Well, we know all this stuff, but what about the family? Who's the family? Like, you see these images and people think they know the story, but I bet there was stuff going on behind the scenes. And as I was talking, you know, I had the vague memories of, yeah, there was other siblings as well. Wasn't there a brother? Wasn't there a sister in that? So I kind of looked into that. And then, indeed, yes, he had the older brother, Tunde, played excellently by John, and I was like, wow, you know, what did he go through during this? Because Richard and Gloria were, you know, always front and center and taking, I guess, were what on the spotlight as it were throughout the whole thing. But behind them, if you look closely, there are family members, particularly. There was this Tunde character. I was thinking, wow, what did he go through? As the older brother as well. In African cultures, there's a lot of pressure on the older brother. So I was interested in exploring that. And just what it took for the family to have that kind of strength to stand up there in front of the world and be dignified. You know, the world's media and everyone was watching them, and particularly because they were coming from Nigeria, expected them to go on, that's it, give the British justice system hell, look how they let you down, this, that, but they didn't do that. And I just thought, it was fascinating, but I just wanted to, I guess, to explore more of that so that the audiences at home can get why this family was special and unique. You know, it wasn't an act, it wasn't that, you know, they were just trying to present themselves just because this is what you do, you know, this is what they believed, that morals were strong. And it was people that we seldom see on TV, so I thought that would be a good direction to go if this was to be made. And fortunately, the BBC liked that idea, and so we kind of rolled with that, you know, that's, you know, story of a family who wanted best for their children, and then this horrible thing happens to their youngest and how they try to overcome. And I mean, in terms of the process, it was all about the research, really. Fantastic research team at Minnow Films, who Mark and Richard constantly asking all sorts of questions, you know, and not the questions you expect, because I was interested in little details, like, you know, what type of music does he like to listen to? when did Tunde pass his driving lessons, you know, things like that. I want to know these kind of things, what was going on in their lives, the everyday stuff that we didn't see, to help me fully understand the world of the Taylors, the individual characters, that goes beyond, again, beyond the headlines and the tabloids and that. I felt that was very important, because then I believe you'll understand their journey more. There wouldn't be just be like a crime watch kind of reconstruct that this is real people, real family, and yeah, I just wanted to do it justice in that way.
I think you did. Babu, what was your research? Because I understand that you actually hadn't met Richard until today. Is that right?
That's correct. I had met Richard earlier today.
And that was a conscious decision, was it?
Early on, I kind of said I wanted to meet, and then Eros floated the idea that I shouldn't.
The director.
Yeah, Eros. Yeah, and I've got to be honest and say I resisted it at first and thought, well, that's impossible. You know, I have to. And he said, actually, in reality, what we're doing will never amount to what Richard actually went through. At the end of the day, it's a story written by Levi, based on something that happened, but we kind of have to treat it with the respect of it being a drama, and that we have to approach it from that angle. And something, when he said it, I remember him saying it to me, and it just clicked. I thought, okay, that makes sense. So on some level, and also, you know, it's Richard Taylor. I remember him from then, and so without being, you know, it would have been a lot of pressure, I think, if I had actually met in person. I had a little bit more freedom to trust my own instincts as a fellow West African, as having lived in that part of the world. I'm Nigerian in Nigeria, and just, you know, coming from a family that's very similar, and very, very similar, and having a little brother, and, you know, being a father myself, I think I just thought, well, I'll try to see where that will take me, instead of, and yeah, it was overwhelming and wonderful to meet Richard today.
And
I say one thing,
yes,
Richard was very sensitive to that as well. So
Very, actually.
Richard, despite lots of invitations, didn't want to come down to the set because he didn't want to put any pressure on any of the actors. So he was, in some respects, he was also encouraging that as well, was really aware of that, which was, again, really generous of him. But
There was a day I was told he's coming today, and then I went, okay. And then later told he isn't, and I thought, good.
just trying to increase the pressure. Yeah, you were getting complacent.
It worked.
But we did our best to present Babu with as much as we could gather, so that he could understand through Richard's own words and through the words of people who knew Richard and knew the family. And this goes for all of the cast. We had a dossier of research which Levi and I were using as the basis for the script, but this was also available to the cast for them to see the family in their own words, and to understand the characteristics and personalities and their backstories and all that.
I spent a lot of time with that dossier. I guess fundamentally it just came down to trying to connect with Damilola.
were there things that you learned from that dossier that shocked you or upset you that
Yes.
you might not know?
Yes.
And can you say anything about them?
Well, there's a couple of things that I found very difficult that I'd rather not talk about, actually. Yeah, but at the time when I saw it, I found myself getting a lot angrier than I thought I would. And I know that we didn't focus on, the legal aspects of it so well, but that really had me questioning and getting quite upset.
And that's one of the very interesting things about this film, is that it isn't angry when it very easily could be, or that's how it seemed to me. I wonder, were you looking at all to apportion blame as filmmakers? Were you looking to affect change at all? It doesn't
Not,
seem so.
not overtly, no. I mean, I don't think any of us went into it thinking we wanted to make a film that was necessarily overtly political or even sort of overtly critical or overly judgmental. I think we wanted, and Levi wanted, I mean, from the very start, Levi was clear about the fact that he wanted the family to be absolutely at the front and centre of this, and in some respects to try and experience all of those things that were around the family through their point of view or points of view, rather than letting some of that stuff too far into it. So it's not the killer story, it's not the judicial system's story, it's not the story of the police, it's not the story of anything other than the Taylor family, really. But of course, all of those elements are really, really important to understanding what the experience was like for the family. But it's very easy to capsize a film like this when you start to try and do everything and then end up doing nothing. So it was absolutely a decision of Levi's to focus on the family. Do you want to say anything about that, Levi?
No, just to reiterate that, I mean, because I always get asked about whether they're accused or
Stuff with the trial and that. And for me, I was like, you know, they've had their time in the limelight, do you know what I mean? And people know their face, whatever. It's not about them. What people need to know more about is the real heroes in this, the people that went through this, that had to go home and return back to that place every day. What kept them together? You know, there's the statistic I remember coming across as well, that many families that go through this kind of tragedies end up splitting apart, husband and wife get divorced and that, but Richard and Gloria stayed together. You know, that's what needed to be focused. So that's how I kind of channeled my own personal, if anything, decision was less of them, more of the Taylors.
And Richard was very supportive and in fact very encouraging with that approach. And in one of our many conversations with him, and I hope you won't mind me saying this, but he encouraged us to remember that whilst Gloria and Richard had such a dignified and united front in front of the media, and it's often necessary for families who go through experiences like this to do that in order to sustain interest. That's how our culture works. That he wanted us to remember that behind closed doors was an anguish that nobody else saw, and it was brave of Richard to encourage us to share that anguish with the audience. That's what lay at the heart of the film for us, was to bring a family's experience out of the claustrophobia of their own trauma and to share that in a hope that that will actually help other people who've experienced similar bereavement, but also just help all of us understand how these experiences affect loved ones. And Richard was very encouraging of us to keep looking closer and closer at the hardest parts of their experience.
Just before we get some questions from the audience, can I ask one more question of Richard, if you wouldn't mind? We saw at the end the founding of the Damilola Taylor Trust. What sort of work are you doing with them now, and how have things changed with regards to knife crime, with regards to youth violence, in light of your work over 15 years?
Yes, Damilola Taylor Trust has done so much tremendous work in the community to bring changes to the life of young people. I remember 2012 was the climax of what we did. Gary Trouser once again is there, sitting in the front, you know, taking us to the Damilola Taylor Trust Spirit of London Awards. First of all, we went to Royal Albert Hall, which was something other charities have never done before, to go, you know, be given privilege of hosting an event at the Royal Albert Hall, and that was a great one. And then the climax of it was 2012, you know, when we hosted over 12,000 young people and celebrities at the O2, the main arena. That, you know, it was. It's the memory of that is still lingering in my brain up till now, that we were able to achieve it. And ordinarily in the communities we have done so much work, you know, to try to change young people's perception to youth crime. We have hosted several events at the Damilola Taylor Center in Peckham, where we bring young people together to talk about their problem. And also we've done so much work in Nigeria to work with this advantaged young people in Nigeria as well. We were able to build a library in Lagos, in one of the deprived location, deprived town in Lagos, because we saw what was going on there compared with what was going on here. So those are things that we have done, which we are very proud of today, that we have been privileged among some other charities to be able to deliver such, and we still continue delivering. When we were working with the Home Office, we work with the police, and severally we have done so much, and then we are very proud of what we have done.
It's a remarkable legacy. Let's get some questions from our audience. There is a microphone floating around, so put your hand up and yes. You can either wait for the microphone, or if you've got a loud voice like me, then just do a shout out.
Thank you. Hello, it's just a question for Babo. I was wondering how much pressure you felt taking the role and how emotional it was to film.
Pressure, honestly.
There's a little switch at the bottom.
Okay. Pressure, honestly. I'll go check. Pressure, honestly, none. When I heard about this role, I thought it should be me because I felt so much affinity in terms of my background, where I come from. And it's not that I looked at, there's so many phenomenal actors here. I just felt a very strong feeling that I'd love to play. It's not even about playing a part, it's what the story meant. I'd come to London and I was actually studying at the time, studying microbiology. And I remember that day, in that period, very viscerally, and being a fellow African who had, that transition into coming to the UK and trying to fit into this society. And that moment when culturally you're so different that actually you stick out. The moment I saw it, I just felt very much like this is what needs to happen. And so I think I could say that of the whole cast, actually, because while we were there was just a sort of relaxedness on set. And then emotionally it was a massive challenge. I didn't realize how much it had drained me, actually. It's kind of odd to talk about yourself in that way, but we had days on set that were, the day on the stairs, for instance, where it catches you completely by surprise because you get there and the stairs are wet. And it's just something that's simple. And I have a 3-year-old daughter, so that's difficult. Those days were difficult, but nothing compared to what the real situation would have been. So you stay humble no matter what.
Thank you.
If I may, I just want to follow up what Baba was saying by paying tribute to Eros, who is in Canada at the moment filming, otherwise he'd be here with us. And Eros's contribution to telling this story was immense. As a director, from the very first moment we met him, he had such an instinctual understanding of the emotional complexity of the story, and a passion and the desire to portray those complexities with both empathy, but also with an unflinching sort of courage and an unflinching gaze. And I know that all of the cast would agree with me that he's been an absolutely critical part of this storytelling, and so I just wanted to thank him.
Yes.
Question for the writer. What are you hoping the impact will be of this drama? Do you think it will kind of help the situation shine a light, because these are very pertinent issues? They're still as relevant now as they were back then.
I hope it again lifts the Taylor family away from just being a, kind of categorised, oh, this was a tragic bit of news and involved this family. I hope it shines light on the real human beings behind that story. There was no real kind of, again, no political aims that this is a anti-knife crime or gang kind of film. But and similar even with my approach when I've done, again, with My Murder, but like when I was asking the question of that, I'll say that if it is a case that someone tunes in, watches, and then they decide not to take that weapon to do whatever they was going to do with it, then I'm happy, But who knows, where it's filmed and how it touch people in different ways and that. But at the heart of it, as I was saying, by just showing human beings, and when human beings see human beings, they can understand and relate more. you know, it will have effect in some ways. And I just hope it'll be positive, whether it be young people, whether it be old people, whether they be black, whether it be white, whether it be Londoners, or whether it be someone annoyed, you know. I just hope that everyone gets whatever they need to it, and it's a positive effect of whatever that effect is.
Anybody else would like to ask a question? Yes, at the back. Just hang on a sec, there's a mic.
Richard, sorry, you said before that you can never forgive your son's killers. I just wondered if the passage of time has changed that at all.
Like you rightly said, we have moved on over the period, but the pain can never go away. For me, question of forgiveness is still something I'm still searching my heart for, because such a tragedy, what it has done to my life, has been so painful and very indescribable, you know, and such. It's the situation that even though we've moved on, the question of forgiveness is still not, it's not there for me to decide upon.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. So my name is Gary. Richard's announced me to everybody. I ran the trust for around 7 years. I'm still working with Richard now. I hope I will be for a long, long time. I think that last question that was just asked, perhaps in relativity to a question you asked of Richard, as to whether things are better or worse now. They're an awful lot worse. And I'd just like to congratulate David on making a fabulous film. I thought that was very, very well done, and I think it showed, you know, the human side of the tragedy behind the media headlines. But the last question that was asked, my big concern with this programme, I'll be honest, is that we don't get all those questions being dredged up again and asked of the family, because it just continues the pain that never ever really goes away. The problem is worse. You flagged up at the end there have been 204 young people died of knife murder since Damaloda's death in 2000. Big difference now, and in fact the figure of young people died on the streets of London is closer to 300 when you take into consideration all the different circumstances in which they've died. Back in 2000, when Dammy died on the 27th of November 2000, just shortly after City Hall had opened and under the jurisdiction of a mayor, it was headlines over every single newspaper. Everybody got to know about it. And that news coverage carried on for an awful long time. Nowadays, when we lose a young person on the streets, it very rarely gets even a column inch. That's how society has changed for the worse. And I hope that you showing the human side of this story, if anything, can bring that back to light, because we don't know the names of those 300 parents, and we don't know the names of those 300 kids, and perhaps we should do.
Thank you, Gary. And I wanted to also just make the point that in the time that we actually filmed, there were a number of young men mostly who died on the streets of London from exactly this cause, and that statistic at the end of the film had to be amended through the editing process. So this remains a real challenge. I think it's really important that we remember families continue to cope with their bereavement for a very, very long time after we, as a society, move on to the next story. I wanted to pay tribute to Tunde and Richard's courage in allowing us to tell the story again, in order that we can bear in mind those families and how they find the strength to I wouldn't say recover from their grief, but process it. And I think our purpose in telling it, partly, is to demonstrate that there can be hope, and that there can be something inspirational that comes from something so tragic. Richard has suffered inconsolable loss, but nevertheless he's found the strength from somewhere to motivate him to help other people. And that's partly why we wanted to tell his story, because that's so inspiring and so powerful. Run out of steam.
Can I just add on a lighter note?
Well, that's what I wanted to say. Yes, it was really important to us that we made a film that wasn't perpetually gloomy. And I hope that you will all have enjoyed the spirit at the beginning of the film, and the spirit that continues throughout the whole film. Damalola's spirit, the spirit of the Taylors, which is of laughter and love and fellowship and solidarity and friendship and strength and all of those really good things, because I want people to come to this film for the power of a family's love, not for the echoes of something painful.
Can I just say, the lights night I wanted to make, Richard made reference to the fact that I said that you should have been older. I said you were too good looking. That's exactly what I told you.
Do we have time for one more question? I think we do. If you can just hang on, there's a microphone coming in.
It's a question in part for the writer and also for Richard. That scene in the taxi where the taxi driver said something quite poignant about how if it was little Jimmy in Chelsea, it would have been dealt with differently to Damalola's case. I was just wondering why you wanted to include that scene and what you, Richard, thought of that.
So, Levi, do you want to go first, say why you included it, and then Richard can give his response?
I mean, that kind of, the stuff that the taxi driver is saying is something that you hear often, particularly when it comes to tragedies that happen in urban areas, amongst probably, black communities, ethnic mixed communities, of just that kind of anger of why aren't the police doing enough. It always comes up, and I think probably in the research, again, I was trying to find out more about, from Richard's side, how many people have come up to him with their opinions. Richard, what do you think of this? Richard, aren't you angry? Richard, are you going to join us on this march? Richard, you can imagine that during that time, people's, maybe could their intentions are right and true, but just constantly on this man to now take up maybe their own issues with society, police, government, and that. And I just thought it's important to represent that voice, because it's an interesting one, because it's kind of like, all right, so you understand where he's coming from, but maybe his methods of how he's trying to get his point across might be wrong. Whatever issues he's going through in his life, is it right that now he should be joining that up to Richard's life? And particularly as well, because I found it really interesting personally for myself, where, Damilola was a school kid and got killed. He wasn't part of a gang. He wasn't on the edge, as it were, and got killed. He was just a school kid who went to try to go home and got killed. And there are people trying to piece his tragedy of death and what happened there with other people who were dabbling in a life that you knew, should something go down, they might end up dead. And I thought, that's interesting. That so coming from that kind of hearing these kind of conversations, and those people who are genuinely innocent, and those people who were on the edge, let's say, and they were trying to attach themselves to those who were genuinely innocent. I thought that was a really interesting thing just to bring up for discussion. So.
For me, I think what prompted that remark from the cab driver was as a result of what was operating, what was going on in the society then, the inequalities that existed. Prior to Dami's death, there was that of Stephen Lawrence, which also the police couldn't find the answer or prosecute the murderers. But for me, I think what prompted that guy was just because of the inequalities that both happens in the white community, in the black community. Another example of such, which could, one could have taken note of, was when my family went to the social services. The lady who attended to them there really shocked me with the way she dealt with their request. This is supposed to be a welfare country then, and then right there in their presence, she said they should go back to where they come from, Nigeria. So as it applies to the white communities also, you know, it implies in the black community. So for that remark, for me, I don't see reasons now for me to believe what that guy was saying or take it as an offense, you know, that, like Levi said, that I was called upon many times that we should go and demonstrate, we should, fight against the authorities, campaign against the authorities. No, I won't do that because I know something went wrong at that time and we need to correct this, the wrong at that period. So I hope that helps answering your question. Thank you.
We have time for one more question, if there is one. Yes.
Oh, hello. Thanks, Rox.
Sorry, this is for Richard as well. I just wondered what you thought of the film.
It's great. It's marvelous. The acts, the actors and the actresses. Young Sammy played his role, and yeah, Juwon. Yeah. Today saw the clip, played by him, and today is my son, big one, and he commented about the close resemblance that, including his white teeth, his white dentures, so he's so. It's wonderful, that they were able to get the actors and the actresses that's really relevant to portray those parts, and I commend the efforts of Colin and Sue and BBC. I have to say thank you to BBC for giving us the budget to take this story to the community, to the people, and also there sits the officer, the police officer who was able to get the conviction. The Kev is there. I want to commend him also to say thank you. He's here today, if not because he was able to assure us, that, yeah, because that time he was the officer on ground. I don't know why they chose the other guy to, to investigate the case. Niv Gevgrave told us that he knew those boys, and he's going to, he assured me that he's going to get them nailed, and that was what he did. So generally, I commend the production team for a wonderful job. Thank you.